So, our question for this week, a last question from the last week's out loud about doing research on Governor Herbert and Iron County Commissioner Paul Cousins, focusing on their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And using it was the website link, the Transformational Leadership, a closer look at the effects and the forecast. So yeah.
All right, sorry I couldn't hear you guys, but I got this working now. I don't know what was going on. There's something like wrong with like the speaker or something, so it wasn't coming through. But
oh, that's weird. Okay. Well, I was just saying what the prompt was for the discussion. It's the last question. Last week's Thinking Out Loud.
Sweet.
So yeah.
Okay, I think the easiest thing, so we have those 4 concepts, right? Like 4 components. I think we should just go down the list and kind of talk about what we found with each of them, if that's good with you guys.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so intellectual stimulation. What did you guys have for that? What was your first impressions about that?
So mine for Governor Herbert, I thought his team has been super creative with the COVID pandemic, just because instead of traditional news sources, they went to start using the emergency alerts, which I thought helps get the news out a lot better, because I stopped checking the news because I was like, no, I don't want to see like the depressing numbers all the time. And so then I wasn't getting the information. So the fact that his team started using emergency alerts to then like say the info that they needed to get out, I thought that was super creative.
Yeah, that is. And it really highlights that this is an emergency and kind of gets your attention when your phone makes that terrible noise.
Yes.
Yeah. I put in mind that I definitely agree that he was kind of more on the more creative side. He was open to new ideas. And then I found this letter that the commissioners released, and they all kind of were just like dogging on all of his ideas. They were like, everything he's doing is absurd. It's an overreach. And like, they were just shutting everything down. So I feel like they were almost on the opposite end of the spectrum, at least in the research I found, where they weren't really open to new ideas. And they were kind of just like, we should just go about our lives and rapid testing is all we'll do and we'll just figure it out. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that that's how they responded to Governor Herbert.
Yeah, I found that letter too, and it was so frustrating. I was like, you're not like thinking creatively about this problem. They were kind of like, no, we're not going to do that. It just bugged me.
Yeah, for sure. I like, and all the words they were saying, it was like, not only was it like, this is a bad idea, it was like, this is absurd and it's a dangerous overreach. And I was like, okay, what do you think we should do? Like, they were just kind of shutting everything down. So
I couldn't find their opinions. That was really hard for me. That they were just like, no, the governor is wrong. And I was like, okay, so what's your plan of action? Like, exactly. Where is your plan of action?
Yep, I think the exact same.
You can't just shut down all ideas and not like propose any solutions of your own and expect things to go well.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else on that one that you guys found that you want to bring up?
I guess I'll say that while I do disagree with Commissioner Cousins and his approach to the COVID-19 pandemic and how to handle it, I will say that I do think he does have some ideas, perhaps not in some of the letters, but he's written a lot of them to the governor. He's also written them to the federal government. He's done quite a few different things. And while I do disagree with his approach, I do think that he does have one, to be fair. It's just not necessarily in terms of focusing on prevention and healthcare, which is where I think it should be. But what he's trying to do is it's like two sides of the same coin. Governor Herbert really wants to bring our numbers down. He wants to protect the most vulnerable people in our communities, and he wants to ensure that our medical community isn't overwhelmed with too many people taking in beds in the ICU and things like that. Well, Commissioner Cousins is worried about the economic side and the economic effects of COVID-19. And so what he's been proposing and the things that he's pushing are things that are going to benefit Iron County economically even during the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. So he does have an approach. It's just not towards the things that I feel like maybe he should be approaching. And so I want to paint a picture where it's like, yeah, he is doing stuff. Like he does have an idea, he does have a plan. It's just I don't think it's like the appropriate plan in this situation. So that's what I would add.
I definitely agree. That's definitely the vibe I got from him. And that like he's really focused on like keeping businesses open and keeping them running and people and tourism and everything, but he wasn't really focused on like helping people not get sick. So I definitely agree with you. I definitely noticed that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that what I read, he was talking about with like rises in stay-at-home orders and mandates and stuff. There's also rises in domestic violence situations and suicides, and he was like, we should focus on that. And I was kind of like, why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be, let's focus on both? That's all issues. Like, we don't want any of that. And so that little part that I read seemed a little narrow-minded to me. So there was that too.
Yeah,
I do think.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, so I'm with you guys all on that. But as I spent time in like the ICU last week, great, I have the newfound perspective on this. Like beds are filling up in Cedar City. So I think you're right because they had to move me out of ICU pretty fast because of just people coming in, even though they're pushing COVID patients to St. George. So I was a little upset that, you know, his focus isn't on health, right? And like you were saying, Allison, like I agree that the focus should be on all problems, right? On keeping economic development up while also focusing on domestic violence and health issues in the hospital, right? Like it shouldn't have to be either or. There should be a solution that can help with all of these.
I agree. And my wife, she's in the nursing program here. It's pretty obvious that the ICU is filling up considering she's received offers. She hasn't finished her nursing program yet to receive a temporary license to work with COVID patients and things like that, and actually just go right into the work field as she's studying. So it's definitely an issue. But I do think that there is still some validity in what Commissioner Cousins wants to accomplish. Again, I disagree with what he wants to do, but, and I guess this is maybe just my own personal political perspective, but I do think sometimes there is some value in having an oppositional voice. Now, I hope we don't follow the voice of Commissioner Cousins because I think that's going to be detrimental to our society at large. But having those ideas out there, that those ideas are floating around, that he is talking about the rise in domestic violence, that he is talking about the harm that it's causing to our community, I hope that helps the people who have more power, like Governor Herbert, to adopt some of those ideas in mitigation so that we don't become complacent in our approach towards COVID-19, so that we do still remember that it's like this isn't the only force that we're battling in our society right now. We are battling suicide, we are battling depression, we're battling domestic violence, we're battling homelessness, joblessness, and we need to remember those things too. And so while again I disagree, I almost kind of hope he keeps writing these letters just so that it like, even if they don't do anything, which again, I like, it's weird because I hope they don't. I just hope it keeps everything in the forefront of everyone's mind where it's like, we do need to ensure that as soon as we can, we get people vaccinated. We we launch a big get your vaccination campaign. We get the highest risk category people done, and we start opening up as much as we can so that we can focus more on some of these other issues as we go forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think this kind of ties into what I said for the next component of individualized consideration. I do think that Cousins is kind of more focused on the individual, and where Governor Herbert is literally trying to make mandates for the entire state of Utah. I feel like maybe his aren't as personal, and Cousins is seeing like these personal issues and he wants to address those. But like this is kind of a hard situation where if we as a whole entire state don't start getting our crap together as a whole, we can't really focus on those individual problems. But I thought that was kind of interesting. It kind of goes with what you're saying about how first we need to get vaccinated, we need to get this over with, and then we need to focus on like those very personal problems that we've been experiencing because of this pandemic. So I thought that was interesting about the comparison of those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Then
every time.
every
Sorry.
time. We're just right on the same level here. No, but I looked at individual consideration based on communication. So I looked at it in a very different way, I think, from just based on the article. So I think what you said, Alex, makes a lot of sense, right? Like I didn't think that Cousins is really looking out for the individual, but I looked at his communication with the individual, and I feel like there wasn't really a way to reach out to Cousins where Governor Herbert had really open lines of communication from the people of Utah, right? Like his Twitter lines are super open. There's websites that you can go to and email. And so I just felt like that individual consideration was really different in the communication form instead of...
I definitely agree, because like previous to this, I was like, I don't even know who Commissioner Cousins is. I don't even know what he's doing. So I definitely agree. I didn't think of it in that way, but yeah, for sure.
I looked at it the same way Brittany did, of communication and keeping those lines open, and I came to the same conclusions. Actually, I was like, Herbert's much easier to reach than our own commissioner. So that was definitely really interesting.
I agree as well. I mean, I saw the same thing. I do think a lot of it is just a matter of like position and resources, though, considering like one is the governor, so he probably has like a lot more resource to do these kinds of things. I mean, like when he did, it was almost like a State of the Union address for the state just a week ago or so. I think that kind of opportunity isn't something that would be like provided to Commissioner Cousins. I don't think he has the ability to make these websites. He probably could have like a Twitter. He's probably just old fashioned. I don't know, but yeah, I did find that to be the same story for whatever cause it might be.
It'd be easy to like email them or call them or message them on Twitter, something like that. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, and every county should have a website that's done by the state that you can contact them by, and I couldn't find it.
I'm like really thinking about it now, and I think the only thing I've seen is like we have like Southwest Healthcare on Instagram that will post like all of the COVID numbers for all the counties in the Southwest. But even then, I don't really think that's individualized enough, because sure they post the numbers, but they can't really do anything like take any suggestions for a specific county still. So I think that's definitely a fault that we've seen. Yeah, for sure. Maybe that should be one of our capstones. There you go. If Corona's not over soon, I will take that initiative. I will make us Corona websites for each county.
There you go.
There we go. Cool. Does anyone else want to add anything about that? I think that was good.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So inspirational motivation. What did you guys think about that? I kind of go for it.
That one was talking a lot about like having a clear vision and communicating that vision and I don't know. It's it's hard to know like what the leader's vision is other than like end the pandemic. And I didn't see anything from either of them that was like anything beyond that or help the economy in a kind of generalized way.
I don't think either of them handle this inspirational category like particularly well. But I do think, I don't know how applicable this is. I do think that Lieutenant Governor Cox has actually done a really good job. And maybe that's because he's the head of the coronavirus task force here in Utah. So maybe he's needed to have clearer messages and goals and sort of an inspirational attitude to impart to his constituents, which is us, and he is the governor elect, I guess, as well. But um, I think he's done a pretty good job, and I feel like um, that just can't really be said of either Herbert or Commissioner Cousins.
Yeah, I think the only time Governor Herbert has really had a vision was when he did his, I'd like to call it the State of the State little speech a couple weeks ago. That's the only time I think I've heard his like vision, and even then it was just like we're trying to clear up the pandemic before the holidays, right? Like Allison said, it's very general. There's not a whole lot of vision out there from our leaders right now, which is a little sad because this is the time that you want a vision. You want them to be out there like, hey, we want a pandemic free Utah. We want to go back into the yellow by this date. These are the steps we're taking to go back into the yellow. We hope to be back in green in this state so we can go back to being absolutely mask free, right? Like, this is when you really need a set vision with goals and steps, and neither of the leaders really have it.
I think, like, honestly, if you were to take that plan to the governor, I feel like that's more like vision than they've even thought about this whole time. Like, when are we going to be in this stage? When are we going to be? But I think like a big problem with this is it's so political. Like, when you have half of the people saying like the virus isn't real, we don't need to be doing anything for it, and like the other half being like, wear your freaking mask. Like, it's so hard to have a vision when people are so divided about what this pandemic really is. And so I think that's kind of like to play devil's advocate for him, I guess, that it's really hard to say something without upsetting one very angry side or another very angry side, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and Governor Herbert's probably just done.
Yeah. True. It's
like
probably
the
the worst
election's
time.
over. Cox is taking over. He did just seem like done.
Yeah.
A little bit.
It's like
Which makes
honestly
sense,
the worst time.
yeah, like it makes sense that he would be done, but he's not quite done yet, so he can't just like throw up his hands.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if he's like trying to give up. It's like you guys said, it's just really hard. I mean, it's so politicized. Um, and it's like for one side, it's if Governor Herbert isn't shutting everything down, then he's not doing enough. And then
Mhm.
on the other side, if he's does anything short of like saying that the coronavirus is a complete hoax and a lie, then that's not enough. And so he's like staying in a middle ground where I think is appropriate, where he should be, but in doing so, he's probably just pissing even more people off. And he's just in a difficult place. So it's like, what can he do to an extent? It's like that's hard. And I think he has also, like I said earlier, I think he's given a lot of that responsibility to Lieutenant Governor Cox, which is probably appropriate considering he's going to be taking the office of governor here soon anyway. So, but I think Governor Cox has done some good things. For instance, like Governor-elect Cox has done some good things. Like he's the one who came up with the plan to start weekly testing for all of the campuses here in Utah. And I think things like that are a good step. He's like, this is our vision. We know where spread is happening in the largest numbers. So our vision is to try to mitigate that spread the best we can through one of the few methods we have available to us by testing us, basically. on
Mhm.
campus. And so I think he's done some good things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out as the leadership swaps over, right, throughout this election year. Like, this is the worst time to have a pandemic, right, when you have an election, because this is really when you should have leaders being firm and not worrying about being reelected and making these political decisions, because your leaders should just be like, nope, these are the steps we're going to take and we should move forward. But instead, you have leaders who are like, I'm trying to get reelected, so I can't piss people off. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see as the change of leadership comes, how that affects the steps in the vision towards the pandemic.
I hope the pandemic's just gone before that even happens. It probably won't be, but that'd be so great.
I hope so.
But that's something that was really frustrating to me about a lot of Herbert's response was he wasn't up for re-election. And so I was kind of sitting here like, why isn't he like being a little bit harder, pushing a little bit more? Like, I get it if Cox is doing a little bit of like wishy-washy, but Herbert just really frustrated me because I was sitting here thinking, you're not up for re-election. Why aren't you pushing more?
This is a good question, particularly considering it seemed like Cox was actually less wishy-washy and he was up for election. So
Election, yeah.
It was weird.
I think like one thing that I've seen throughout this whole class is like the whole thing with motivation and like how do you even motivate people and like how do you do it while still being like the good guy, and like there's just so many approaches to motivating people that I think in this case Herbert was like, I think he is kind of just done, and I think Cox was like, I will get elected if I cure COVID in Utah. So I think that's kind of maybe one reason that he was more firm about it and that motivated people towards his cause, because he was more passionate about it in that sense. But I think it's always going to be a question of how do we even motivate people to do what we want? Like, I don't know. So.
Because apparently don't kill grandma isn't motivation enough.
Exactly. Like, I don't know. Stimulus checks and everything, nothing has been motivation enough for people to stay home and do what they need to do to protect you. But whatever, we'll get through it eventually, hopefully.
Oh,
I think this kind of leads into the last component though of idealized influence, and like how what they're doing has put trust into the different people and everything. So what did you guys have about that? What do you think?
This one I think was the hardest category for me to write about. Just because I didn't know Commissioner Cozen enough to, I think, write about if people are willing to follow him, right? Like motivate. I didn't know enough about him, right? Like, and I feel like looking on the internet isn't always the most reliable source. So yeah, I was just like, I don't know enough about him to know if he inspires people to follow him. But just from what I wrote, I figured the answer is sort of no, just because, right, as we went through like the intellectual stimulation, individualized consideration, inspirational motivation, I was like, you're very much a fence sitter on a lot of these. And so that's not really motivational. And Herbert was sort of like, you're respectable and people follow you for that, but also the same thing, right? Like you don't really have the vision, and you're not really motivating people right now. And so I think, right, respect is important as a leader, but they were both lacking in areas.
I for sure agree with you. And this one I kind of like went off of just my opinions on what's happening and like everything that they've said. And I definitely don't think Commissioner Cousins really is gaining the respect of the people he needs to make real change in our county. Like he hasn't really done enough that people should be following him for it. So I definitely agree with you in that sense. And I said Governor Herbert as well, obviously has a little bit more respect. But I think that just came down like personally, I think the things he's focusing on with the pandemic align more personally with my beliefs about the pandemic. So that was I definitely did this one kind of opinion based about what I think should be going on right now. So, but
And that makes sense. They're your leaders. You need to be able to respect them. So, um, yeah, when in the article it specifically said that like leaders need to be respected as people lead, and that's part of being a good leader. And I just laughed because everyone on like both sides of the politics in COVID is just pissed at Herbert. Like some people are mad at him because he did a mask mandate, and then other people are mad at him because he didn't do it soon enough. So it's just kind of funny.
So as far as Cousins goes, and I don't know how, like, it's like Brittany said, I don't know that you can really respect or find truth in what you read on the internet. However, I do belong to that, like, what's happening in Cedar City Facebook page. And if you don't belong to that, you really should, because it is something else. But Commissioner Cousins, he posts on there a lot. And it does seem like a lot of the people around here do really like the things he says. Like, if I like go through the comments on this, like I'm looking through it right now, they're always like, "Thank you, Commissioner Cousins. Like, this is what needs to be said, and like we'll follow you to the end." And it's like there are some people who are really diehard about the things that he says. I don't know, how many of those people there are, but I do know they exist, so I'll just throw that out there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I feel like I need to get on Facebook just to join that group now and be a part of all of that.
Yeah, what is it? Is it just like a general update of what goes on in Cedar City, or?
Yeah, kind of. It's a group that just posts a lot of stuff about things that are going on in Cedar City, like events, political things, stuff like that. But you'll find that there are some interesting ideologies that exist within Cedar City. So, yeah, you'll learn a lot about where you live if you join that. So,
I think that's like another point to add to this. Like, I feel like we're totally like different groups of people. Like all the people who live in Cedar City and know, like they have grown up with Commissioner Cousins and like the Cedar City environment in this county, and then the college kids who are just here for 4 years and then off to do whatever else. And it's I'm sure it's harder to build more respect among the people in the 4 years that you have with them here, rather than like the people who have been here longer and know how Cedar City really runs and what people think here and everything like that. So I think that's something to be said about motivating people and them respecting you and everything.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the joys of a smaller town of the community, and so they're literally your neighbors. And I think that changes the dynamic a little bit.
I think it changes the dynamic a lot
For
because where I'm from, a bigger city, right? Like, I think my county commissioner does a fantastic job for how big our city is. But like in Cedar, I'm like, I don't know, I'm just here. Like, do I actually really live in Cedar? I don't know.
True. I'm like thinking about, though, I don't even know who my commissioner is for like my parents' home county. So maybe I just need to be more involved. Probably this is my answer at least.
yeah, typically I don't think the county commissioner really does that much, but typically, like, the vast majority of their job is just like running county lands and like county facilities and things like that. But I think COVID-19 is just it's just a different beast.
Definitely. I'm trying to think. I think we've covered all like the components. Does anyone else have anything about transformational leadership about the two of them?
I think on the whole, I wouldn't categorize either of them as a transformational leader because there were multiple categories where I was like, I didn't really see them doing this. The kind of overall, no, they're not. Not that they're bad leaders, they're just not that type of leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if I had to choose out of the two of them, I think I would say Herbert was definitely more of a transformational leader, but like you said, neither of them really hit every single tick box that they would to really be great at it. So
Awesome.
cool. I think that's everything I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's everything I have.
Me too.
Brittany, I think you should go to the Capitol building and propose your ideas about setting visions and goals because I think it would really help. Send your tweet or your email or whatever you need. Like, I think it'd be a good idea.
Like, hey guys, here's our plan.
Directly
I'm making it for you.
When will we be back to these stages? Please start setting date and goals. We need a vision. I think that's a great idea. Also, I'll write a handwritten letter.
I'm kidding, going through SU, you were like, hey guys, pick your date when we want this done.
Exactly, for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks guys for another great week. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Same time next week.
Yeah.
I can probably make it work.
All right. Bye.
See you guys later.